Welcome to the Dirty Verdict Podcast, where your host, trial lawyer Kyle Herbert and mediator Peter Toff break down Texas legal news, lawsuits, and verdicts. And now, here's Kyle and Peter.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Dirty Verdict Podcast with Peter Taff and Kyle Herbert. Kyle, we've got two special guests today. Who are they?
Well, we are bringing Bill Ogden back, a special repeat guest to try and keep us in line. But our newcomer is your friend and mine, Joe Melugin, straight from Elvis, Graceland country, Memphis, Tennessee. Joe is a lawyer here in Houston who specializes in part in 1983 cases. Joe, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, well, I've been a lawyer here in Houston for just over 15 years.
Jeez.
Been in Houston for almost
I got to
20.
say, the mountain man beard makes it look like it's been longer.
Yeah, well, that was about 3 crises ago. This is the Harvey beard that just never went away.
Sure.
And so I've been here. I'm married, have a couple of young kids, and all's good.
Originally from Tennessee and went to the University of Tennessee. Is that accurate?
That's inaccurate.
Oh.
Originally from Texas, but I did go to high school in outside of Memphis, and then went on from there to the University of Tennessee.
The original UT, I believe.
Original UT and the original Texans. That's what the Volunteers is about.
Now, it's my understanding that you did back up T. Martin for a period. Is that true?
No, T and I were the same class in school.
Tell me at least you've named one of your children T.
Tamaris, yeah.
Nice.
We have one T in the family.
Peyton? You got a Peyton?
No Peytons.
Not yet.
Gave you a championship. Is this how you repay him?
That's not correct. T was the one who gave us the championship.
Peyton laid the groundwork.
There was the Chiron during the Orange Bowl had that same mistake. It said Peyton Manning 94 to 97. Right underneath it, 1998 national champion. It's like, well, yeah, he was not there then.
That didn't happen.
I mean, whatever facts you want to go by.
It's fine, yeah. Alternate facts work,
And then law school.
At the University of Houston. Go Cougs. So
Go Cougs.
Either way, it's a good year for you.
Basketball school, both sides, yeah.
Fantastic. You guys will get back to some football decency probably sometime in the future. But
They got back this year.
52-49, man.
there you go. All right. So you handle 1983 cases, which, as I understand it, has something to do with, first of all, it's a federal statute.
Right.
And it has something to do with official oppression by police departments. Is that accurate?
Well, it's general government actors, yes. But it's any kind of federal civil rights claim usually falls under 1983. And so they're just kind of generally referred to as 1983 cases when there is some kind of official oppression or oppression under the color of state authority. And so
every time we see a police brutality case, those end up getting filed as 1983 cases. Accurate?
yes, anywhere in the country, that's probably going to be the case. They'll file it. They'll be filed as 1983 claims.
And so we've seen a ton of these last 4 or 5 years. Ahmaud Arbery and all these other people getting assaulted and killed by cops. And you've got, how long have you been doing this kind of law in Houston?
So the first case I took on was probably in about 2012, 13.
Okay.
Somewhere around there. And it was a police shooting case. It was the shooting death of Kenny Relaford. Rest in peace, Kenny. And that was the first case that I had and had some success with. It was a Houston police officer who shot Kenny, and the original story just really didn't add up. There were a bunch of independent witnesses that contradicted the original police story and got my attention that way. And from there, I worked on that case with another lawyer that y'all likely know, Walt Cubberly, who's now in John Eddie's group. And Walt and I worked on that case for a number of years, and then those cases aren't never short because of the nature of the case. Defendants are always allowed qualified immunity. When qualified immunity is denied, they're then allowed an interlocutory appeal. So
let me stop you for just a second.
Even on the early parts, yeah.
So that phrase qualified immunity is all over the news last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me, what, legally speaking, what is qualified immunity and what does it get the defendants?
So it's really an extremely broad legal concept that's created by the Supreme Court. It's not a part of any statute. And it was created not in the context of even police. It was created in the context of other government officials. And it's this idea that if a government official is trying to do his job or her job and just makes a mistake in judgment, then they shouldn't have to be, brought down to court, essentially. And it's the problem is that Frankenstein's monster has grown to something that I don't think could have ever been intended or envisioned. And you have this what has become a near impossible hurdle to overcome at the very beginning of a case against a police officer like that. So anytime you have a case like Breonna Taylor or Ahmaud Arbery or Kenny Relaford or anyone else, they're all going to have to first overcome qualified immunity before they even get to proving their case under 1983, which is another hard hurdle to get over. And so anyway, that's in short what qualified immunity is. It's not a defense to liability. It's a defense to even having to go through with trial. So it's brought up early, and usually brought up early, and it's a very hard test to have to overcome. And even when a plaintiff does overcome it, they're then usually stuck with the likelihood of an interlocutory appeal.
So what do you have to do to get around Frankenstein's monster?
So I'm not really going to go into that too much, just because I don't.
Is that so super boring?
No. Well, I think it's not really well understood, and so I don't really want to necessarily show people the way of their past errors necessarily.
Okay. Tell me colloquially, what is the problem with qualified immunity?
The problem with qualified immunity is that it is such a broad test and such a hard thing to get over that you have to show that the right that was violated was well known enough to the officer that he should have known. And that creates a couple of problems because there's a specificity requirement essentially that there has to have been a similar case before your case that informs the officer that what he did was unconstitutional.
So they get like a one bite free rule.
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
But that's a general one bite. Obviously not the same officer, but yeah.
Right. Okay. So these cases are incredibly difficult. I've handled one or two and ran myself in circles and was not able to really help out my client. Why did you decide to make this the focus of your practice?
Well, it's not the focus of my practice, and it's not the focus of my practice for that very reason. They are very difficult cases, and for every 10 or 20 that you look at, you really only take a second look at maybe one, and then from there, maybe that goes a little bit further, maybe it doesn't. But they are incredibly difficult, and I think just kind of the way that the law has developed, there's not a lot of potential payoff unless you can also keep the governmental entity itself on the hook for liability. And that's a very difficult test that doesn't even taking qualified immunity totally out of the picture. You still have to deal with getting the governmental entity on the hook, which is Monell liability, which is another big problem.
So
huge problem.
So Peter and I had a chance to chat about one of the cases that you've been handling recently, which is my understanding you've resolved the case against Houston Police Department, but there are some other claims still outstanding, so we're not going to get too deep into those. But that was a case where I guess a mentally ill young man tried to check himself into a hospital and ended up naked and shot by HPD. Is that fair?
Tased too.
He was tased. He actually did check himself in. He wrecked his car as he drove himself to the hospital, wrecked his car outside the hospital doors essentially, and then was checked in, told staff that he was bipolar and suffering from a manic episode. There were more indications from information gathered from his family over the night and then the next morning. And ultimately, yes, I'm cutting this very short and not giving much in terms of facts, but the following day, security was called to his room. Security was two Houston police officers who were working extra jobs at the hospital, and they went in there with no medical training, with no other medical staff at all, really. It was just the two of them and my client, and he was tasered and shot, yeah. He was fortunate to survive, though.
When you handle a case like that, do you get to depose the officers and ask why they did what they did?
Yes, you do.
Are you allowed to tell it? I mean, I'm curious what the rationale was. Are you able to share that with us?
I'm not going to do that right now.
No comment.
Yes.
All right, we will just continue to wonder. Maybe after the rest of your case comes on back, we can chat more about it. But you were able to. I'm not spilling any beans here. You settled that case for a decent sum against HPD. Is that right?
I think it was a good result against HPD. As far as I could tell, it was the largest settlement for any non-fatal shooting in the city's history. If anyone else has other information, otherwise I'd love to hear it, but I'm pretty sure it is the largest settlement for a non-fatal shooting.
What was it?
It's 900 to 500, 902,000.
Okay.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, the county settled the ITC case that the county had against them for the Clean Air Act. It was $940, so yeah. But that wasn't a shooting or anything like that.
Right.
They don't pay a lot of money on that. I mean, you're not getting 8 figures from something like that, unfortunately.
Right. Well, congratulations. That's a fantastic result.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
We wanted to kind of run some other recent 1983 local cases by you. We could all chat about. Bill, I don't know if you know this, but he's a huge fan of yours, and he loves 1983 cases.
Right.
Like the life of a high-powered PI lawyer doesn't really interest him. He's interested in civil rights. So Peter, our resident expert and researcher in chief, has dug up a few recent cases. We thought we would run them by the crew and see if we had any thoughts.
Yeah. So I think maybe this will be a good way to get Joe's kind of input without having him disclose private details of pending cases.
Fair enough.
Okay, my half-time hometown of Austin, Texas, recently settled 3 cases involving the May 2020 protests involving the George Floyd. They were typical Austin fashion. I think the George Floyd thing went down in like March, right? Like right when COVID was starting.
Yeah, that's when it happened.
Yeah, but Austin kind of screwed around, and yeah, they waited until May to get around to it.
I think Houston's was like first week of June. Was that the big one?
Yeah, so they did it in Austin in May, and then there have been $18.88 million paid out associated with that.
How many cases is that?
That's a lot. It hasn't given a number yet, but they have ranged from $100,000 to $8 million individual payouts.
Is this, correct me if I'm wrong, a bunch of protesters are on 35 right across from Austin Police Department.
They shut 35 down.
They shut down 35, and then the cops come out. This could be totally wrong. This is based on, 3 years of news coverage that I've forgotten.
You weren't there?
Well, I live in Houston, so
Which doesn't mean anything in response to the question.
I think probably most of the people there weren't from Austin.
As Bill pointed out, I was waiting for the June march.
Yeah, he had his catcher's gear on. He was ready to Antifa everything.
You're on tour.
True. My Occupy Austin job had ended, so I'd come back to Houston. Anyways, didn't they come out with like rubber bullets or like these like hacky sacks full of BBs and like get people in the eyeball or something like that?
Yeah, so the 3 recent settlements were $375 to someone who was pepper sprayed, shoved, and threatened by 3 officers.
It must have been a good threat.
That just
I was going to say
that's my first marriage, basically. That's not that big a deal.
Every law student with debt should have been there. They would have been a clear up real quick.
Yep.
Second one, $450 because an officer shot his wrist and hand with a beanbag round. And the third was $675. And these are $1,000 US.
$400,000 for getting shot in the wrist with a beanbag?
$450.
I mean, if you're going to get shot with a beanbag, I don't think anybody should to an extent, but if you are like in the wrist,
so
I think it's a good spot.
I thought you were a police lawyer.
I will say
I am, but I'm just saying like.
So hold on. So we make light of these injuries because from a very safe distance, they seem entertaining.
This is a safe place.
But it's also my understanding, I actually know some lawyers that handle some of these cases. Like these are like beanbags full of metal BBs, and they will break bones and they will do some pretty significant injury. So
Okay, let's back the tape up a little bit. Now that I know that these are like full with shotgun BBs, this is a little bit different.
Sensitive.
I'm an asshole. I'm sorry. Damn it.
So these are some pretty significant numbers.
We got one more.
Lay it on me.
675 for being shot in the torso with a beanbag round.
That
sounds
broken bones.
It's
It
terrible.
can't stop your heart. If it
Oh,
hits your
yeah.
chest,
Yeah.
It's a baseball.
Yeah.
So let's just say, what's the legal? I mean, I get it. They may have settled for other reasons other than merits of the case and legal, et cetera. But what would be how would you line that out as a plaintiff's lawyer on those cases?
I mean, I think those are good results, not knowing anything about these kinds of injuries that they suffered and what their damages models look like. But, with 1983, it's not that there is a limit of liability. It's that there's a practical effect of you're normally limited to the individual officers unless you can show that a policy was the moving force of the constitutional violation. And then you can go after the city of Austin or Travis County or whatever governmental entity it was that was employing the officers. It's that second step, and Bill recognized a moment ago, that Monell liability that is, as hard as we talk about qualified immunity, Monell is 10 times harder to get over. I mean, it is a very difficult standard. And so
So just to back up, Monell is a case, and it's the Fifth Circuit's case on what you have to plead successfully to get past a 12B6 or a 12C motion to dismiss. And I've faced both of the current ones I'm facing them right now, and it's an extremely difficult standard.
it's you have to show the policy was the moving force. And it's not as simple as just saying, well, here's the policy and this is the force. You have to normally there's some statistical evaluation. You have to look at previous cases, previous implementations of that policy and how it has caused similar previous constitutional violations, essentially.
I think it's there so that when you have an officer that does a true wrong kind of outside the scope of what he or she should have been doing, the city's not, or the county is not, the governmental agency is not going to be on the hook for that wrongdoing necessarily.
Sure.
Well, but you could always have that without having the Monell. I mean, in the standard responding superior, if they're acting outside of the scope of their authority, you're not going to be able to keep the employer. But here, there is no responding superior. It's really a totally separate, and it's not a vicarious liability. It's a separate and independent liability on Monell. Anyway, just to say that it's difficult, but I obviously I like seeing those kinds of numbers. But the interesting thing to me in 1983, at least through my experience, is it's really localized because of the different protections maybe that the officers in whatever city might have through their collective bargaining agreement, and what kind of indemnities might be in place for the individual officers through those collective bargaining agreements from the city. And so, in Houston, you have for individual officers under their collective bargaining agreement, their limit of indemnity is only $100,000 on these kinds of cases. And so unless you can get Monell liability on the city, you're really left with a practical cap of $100,000 because the person you're going after is most likely judgment proof.
Yeah.
You're just not going to collect.
So anytime I see something over 100,000, at least if you were to move those same cases to Houston,
they become
the value changes totally because you don't know what the indemnity is. I don't know personally what the indemnity agreement might be in Austin.
Is there a state level indemnity agreement for Texas Rangers, stuff like that?
It's a great question, Bill. I don't know.
Oh.
In Austin, these
I don't know either.
An expert.
These settlements come out of the city's liability reserve fund, which had a $30 million balance available. So is that something unique to Austin? Will they set aside a fund for that?
I don't know the internal workings of Houston. I know that it was, it's hard to get them to cough up anything. So
I'd like to know when that fund, like what was in that fund the day of the protest, before the officers started lighting up people's wrists with metal BB beanbags.
Probably
It was probably just a bunch of
less than 30 million. I would bet.
Yeah.
Starbucks cards and some Texas Roadhouse gift certificates, probably.
Well, so, but aside from the maybe political reasons why that would settle, would it be the idea that City of Austin didn't have a good mass protest plan and just kind of released these officers and said, here's some beanbags?
I think they'd have to
Things.
have ordered them to use the beanbags.
Maybe,
Okay.
or the policy and how they were trained to use them. And I think there are a number of ways you could probably plead a Monell case against the city for something like that, because clearly they're all there meant doing the job and been armed to do what they ended up doing, right? So I mean, I think you can make a pretty good case for Monell liability there. I think the harder cases are, kind of the cases that we face in Houston, where it's an individual event and it's not some, it's not really easy to point to some higher up who's made decisions to put people in certain places doing certain things like you would have in a protest response.
Well, let me ask kind of a broad question. Do you think verdicts like this against a police force or the city governmental entity that employs them, do you think verdicts or settlements drive institutional change, or are we kidding ourselves that somehow motivates them?
I think they can.
Certainly.
I don't know. I don't know that I've seen a lot of it. I know that for whatever reason, soon after the Relaford case came out, and we ended up settling the Relaford case, police shootings dropped pretty dramatically for several years in Houston, and then they went back up. So
when did they go back up? Do you know?
it was. I think there was a drop. You can get their numbers. Their numbers aren't exactly accurate, and they're all lies, damn lies, and statistics kind of thing. But I think it was around 2017, 2018 when they started to climb back up again.
That would make sense.
I was about to guess that.
So, like, for example, I think we all know this case that happened a few years ago in Houston where they had like the no-knock warrants.
Harvey Street.
Where they showed up and blew this couple away.
Right.
And then I guess they tried to suggest it was a drug deal gone wrong and all this other nonsense. And it eventually got prosecuted by the Southern District of the U.S. Attorneys, the Southern District of Texas. Was
his name Goins?
Goins, yes.
Yeah.
He was prosecuted locally as well.
On the civil side, civil side's Doyle? isn't
Mike
it?
Doyle,
Yeah.
Doyle, yeah. So good, fantastic lawyer. I've dealt with Mike plenty of times.
Great.
So do you know, like, has that, because like to me, I'm a layman, right? I do not do this kind of law, but it seems like the idea that the police could kick in your door and serve a warrant as you're there laying in bed and expect you to lay there and not defend yourself seems nuts. Do you have any idea if that policy has changed? Because this has not just happened in Texas, it's happened nationwide. Any sense of that?
I know the one in Houston's a little bit different than that scenario because you had some of the higher ups forging affidavits for warrants and that kind of thing. So I think there was a little bit more to it, but
There are a lot of facts to the case, and I don't
Sure.
know them well enough to speak on them. But you're right. There were. I mean, Goins is the Goins situation has led to a number of convictions that he was the only witness for, and the prosecuting witness. A lot of exonerations and overturnings of convictions.
yeah, I was going to say they kept it on the.
a police informant.
No,
He
he
was a cop.
detective,
He
I
was
think.
in this
I got you.
particularized unit that was serving this no-knock warrant. And I know for at least a short period of time following the Pecan Park raid, they suspended the use of no-knock warrants, except in limited circumstances. And how those exceptions were applied or not applied, I can't really speak to, and I'm not sure that they really even have that. That rollback of that policy has maybe gone away as well.
I will say the district attorney's office was really good about, because I haven't heard anything about the overturn of other cases, because this is kind of what appeared to me as institutionalized corruption. I guess that's a word. What's a safer word?
What's your safe word, Joe?
I'm not really sure. I mean,
Rocky
there was some weird. I would say it was these guys really
Training day.
very very much a training day, like Cowboys type situation where they were just falsifying all kinds of affidavits to justify raids, and having these fake drug buys that never occurred or whatever it might have been. I've not spent a lot of time looking back on that case recently, but Mike would probably be a great guest, but I know he's also probably going to be pretty close to the vest on what he's going to talk about too.
Yeah, he's in the middle of it. But the district attorney, I know that when that happened, it came out, the first thing I thought of was all of the prosecutions and people that are in prison now based on that unit's work. All of them, I think, were up for review at least, but I didn't hear anything about them.
Joe, as the expert on this, if you were going to create a specialized unit comprised of me, Bill, and Peter, what would it like? Could we be the Scorpions? Like, what would you think would be a good
I think
name?
Scorpion was the name of one of the units that
It was.
this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
If not in Houston, it was another city had a Scorpion unit that was doing bad news.
Like, we would need a really cool name.
Yeah, daffodils.
The Scissorup.
Right.
It's not.
Cobras.
The opioid epidemic took that one away from you, Kyle.
Poppies.
The what?
Poppies.
Poppies? Oh, okay.
Scissorup.
Oh, no. I thought I was
The
off.
Purple Drizzink. That could be our team name. I don't know.
That's
Work on it. I'll make some leather vests.
We're gonna work on that. We're gonna need some patches and maybe a rodeo vest.
All right, let me switch gears.
Okay, please.
Joe, aside from the police brutality cases, what other type of work do you do? And give us a quick little professional background.
So I started my plaintiff's career with Tommy Fibbage.
I hate that guy.
Yeah. He's the one and only, the great Tommy Fibbage. And I was with his office for about 7 years. And then went in with Dax Favas for a couple of years and then struck it on my own about 5 years ago. And so in that time, I've been doing, almost exclusively personal injury cases with the occasional civil rights case sprinkled in. I try to stay away from medical malpractice cases, but otherwise it's a pretty, kind of standard mix of typical plaintiff's work. I've done some oil field cases, have some oil field cases ongoing now, tractor trailer crashes, of course, and standard industrial incidents, that kind of thing.
So started with Fibbage right out of school?
I was a year working in a defense firm up in the Woodlands, and then Fibbage started in 2008.
Good. All right.
Were there any other 1983 cases you wanted to hit, Pete?
There was one more. It's a Houston one, and I think it's kind of falls under the rubric that we've been talking about, which is the Civil Rights Corps based out of Washington, D.C. has filed a suit against 3 deputies out of Precinct 1 in Harris County involving a dog attack on their client.
This sounds like it's got some teeth. Go ahead.
I know Precinct 1 well.
Yeah.
I currently represent 2 deputies in the civil rights case we have filed in federal court against Precinct 1 and a couple of their deputies for some undercover operations that weren't exactly what they were supposed to be.
So the deputies are your clients.
The 2, it was some younger female deputies and a lot of and the males in the operation. It was an undercover sting and it was a bachelor party.
It was a prostitution sting.
It was actually a human trafficking sting because they would have the sex workers. I think that's the right word, not prostitute.
That is the right word.
Yeah, sex workers come in, and then I think the goal was to have them roll on the person ahead of. I think it's pimp. Okay to say?
I think you can say.
Okay, yeah. They were trying to get them to roll on the pimps.
Sex traffic.
I'm so scared about what you're going to say right now.
Sex worker coordinator.
But the bachelor parties turned out to be more of a party for the top brass and these young untrained. None of these young females had any undercover training, so they just kind of threw them into this operation. Some of them had to go to some sex stores, adult stores, and buy certain clothing and try it on. And then there was a lot of inappropriateness going on, in my opinion. But we're litigating that right now, and that's in Precinct 1. And then I know. The case that Peter's referencing, I believe there was a dog was sent onto a person, but then later it came out that deputy was involved in a child sex trafficking ring with a dispatcher.
So Pete, do you have a recitation of the facts of this nightmare?
Yeah, that's basically it. The victim was
Sounds like two nightmares.
Yeah, right. The victim in the underlying suit was being dispatched, and they used an attack dog who they let the dog do more than, I guess the dogs are just supposed to help dispatch the guy, but after that, they let the dog
dispatch, like just get him to the
tackle
ground?
them, and yes, you can
Subdue.
Yeah, subdue.
Detain.
But they let the dog apparently go above and beyond the call of
Chew
duty.
on some
Got
dude.
the extra.
Yeah, got the.
Okay, so this guy releases a dog that goes crazy, hurts somebody.
Well, then he gets on top, according to the lawsuit, gets on top of the guy and lets the dog just keep going after tearing at the guy,
Seems bad.
the arrested person. But so the case is against two deputies and the estate of one deputy. And the reason why it's the estate is because one of the deputies, after a 6-hour standoff with police, he died by suicide, according to the ABC 13. And that was because he had allegedly confessed to sexually abusing multiple children.
And he was using one of the precinct 1 dispatchers to organize some of it as well. And so, yeah, I believe there was like a high-speed chase, and then I believe it ended in Liberty, Texas.
So is this Harris County Sheriff's
Constable, precinct 1
Well,
constable.
okay, constable's office. Man, I've had some run-ins with the constables. So the constable's office sicks a dog on somebody, and then as it turns out, that dude is the same guy who's running like a child sex trafficking ring, confesses
Allegedly.
to it, and
Allegedly.
then allegedly kills
According to
himself.
ABC
Not
13.
allegedly
Yeah.
dies by suicide.
He
died
does
by
in fact kill
suicide.
himself.
According to the news, I
That's
know
a full
that
weekend.
according to the news, once he stopped his car and there was a little bit of a standoff, he picked up the phone, called somebody. I think my recollection is he called somebody at the precinct and not only confessed everything, but like outed everybody that was in it involved. And then he did it. So I'm not
Better
going
have a
to.
recording of that call.
I would assume that was recorded, but
Judge, my body cam happened to turn off for those 11 minutes following the confession, implicating all of my coworkers.
I think it was just one coworker and then some other people. But I hope it was just one.
I got to tell you, that's a set of facts that even the weirdest law school professor probably could not come up with.
When you read
I've
that
had some weird ones.
when you read that law school exam, you think like this criminal law professor's got bodies under his house.
Yeah, 100%. And
But it's-
photos of them on a hard drive.
But it's the same analysis as any of these other ones, right? Where you've got, people.
In terms of the 1983 claim, yes, it would be. And I would assume is that the federal case filed against the
just the individuals.
not the
Yeah.
Harris County or the constable.
According to the story.
Who filed it? Do you know? Did we talk
It was
about
called the Civil Rights Corps
Core?
out of Washington, D.C.
Is it like a public interest group?
Yeah, it has. I think they're the biggest rival for the Peace Corps, but it's not really a rivalry. Peace Corps kind of dominates them. The Marines are the top, and then it goes down from there.
Oh, by the way, Trial Lawyer Nation has just dropped another episode today, Kyle.
God.
Man, I hate those guys.
You're turning red already.
We'll lead that into our next segment.
We're going to start selling
I'm gonna-
vitamins and brain drugs. We're going to bury Trial Lawyer Nation.
I'm going to invite Cowan onto this show, and then you're going to sit with him, talk to him, and you're going to leave saying, "Wow, that guy's a really cool guy."
No, he's a wonderful human being.
Except when he's on a mic, then he's a terrible person.
Super
right?
nice. But what I'm saying is, we get that guy on here,
He's just going to plug his podcast on
and we
yours.
bring in the attack dogs, and we,
I thought
God.
you were
Hey,
bringing the psychedelics.
Subject change so we don't get canceled just right off the start.
I would say that Cowan in part got me through like the first month of COVID because I would just listen to his, velvety voice, which now just is like fingernails on a chalkboard. That's how much I hate this guy. All right, Joe, before we let you go, and we might bring you back if you want to stay and chat, but before we go, there is a right answer to this question. Greatest Tennessean of all time.
And you are in Texas. I think Sam Houston was from Tennessee.
Why are you ruining this,
No,
Bill?
No, there's not a right answer if that's the one you were thinking.
It's not. I was just trying to get you there.
All right. I'm gonna go greatest Tennessean ever.
Okay, I mean, I didn't ask you for the Rushmore of Tennessee.
It's Coe, but it's Coe.
I hear it.
It's Dolly Parton and Tina Turner.
Ooh.
Wow.
You know what?
Wow, curveball.
I'm going to give you Dolly a little bit extra credit for Tina, but that was not the right answer. That's right.
So what was Kyle?
How come you Sam Houston? Come on, man.
I didn't even know. I don't know who he was from. I knew he came with the
he
Volunteers,
was-
but I don't know if he's from there.
He was governor there. Actually, I think he might be from North Carolina.
Wow, Kyle.
But he was governor. He was governor there
He was-
and governor here.
Governor of Tennessee, senator from Tennessee, president here, governor here.
President here. Okay.
By the way, this dude's life was so awesome that he got married 2 weeks later, chased out of town on a rail by his ex-wife's family. He flees all the way to Arkansas on a riverboat, resigns his job, I believe, as governor of Tennessee.
He was governor. I think.
He was in charge of the militia of Tennessee.
He was
and
the
ran.
governor of Tennessee, flees the state, hooks up with another dude, goes on like a 3-week bender, burns all his clothes, vows to God he'll never speak English again, and moves in with the Indians. And that is a dude that I want to party with so bad.
I mean, that is it's a guy that loves running from his problems.
Or,
Which is the story of Texas. It's great.
all right.
Are we not going to ask why he burned his clothes? That just kind of
I think
just leave it there.
I'd
All right,
say
we'll leave it
it's
there.
great.
That's fine.
He started wearing
Any number of reasons would work. Yeah.
I mean, imagine, now, this is not a joke. He went from being governor of a state to deciding to move in with the natives, drink all the firewater, and wear only a loincloth, and also never speak English again. Now, he eventually broke that vow.
Broke
did,
all those vows.
Yeah, then he became president of a country.
but that is
And in the state he was governing was
Barely
barely
a
a
state.
state. As we
Ooh.
I mean,
Tell that to Dolly.
These were not really well organized. The states that we think of now. I mean,
Shots fired at Tennessee. You heard it here first.
No. Shots fired at all the states. This is a time in which we barely had a functioning government. We're going back there. We'll learn again. It's
Yeah.
I love how everybody was like, President Trump did some stuff that most presidents don't do. And I'm like, oh, that's how you become president. And then it's like, wait, but President Sam Houston did some way crazier
some
stuff.
even more amazing things. I'm just saying, I've had some bad breakups. Never have I been chased across 3 states by a young lady's family and then decided to take up with a local Indian tribe and not wear clothes anymore. I'm willing to try it.
Night's young.
I don't know if you've done it right yet, Kyle.
That's my point. Exactly.
If you want to, I've got a guy.
Yeah,
Got a
100%.
guy for everything.
And now they have casinos too.
Yeah, Tennessee does. The sports gambling is legal there as well. Actually, all the sports gambling is all online.
Yeah, it's all
They don't-
legal online now.
They don't have. They have casinos, I think, maybe in Memphis on the riverboats, but not.
You whatever money I was planning on putting towards my children's college is just gone now.
They'll get
Why do
scholarships.
you think that?
You're
You're going to double it.
Your
or triple it.
Exactly. It's not gambling if you know what
winning.
you're doing. It's just winning.
You can easily do that if you waste all your kids' college fund on gambling.
why are
just
you guys
vote for
talking like
Bernie, and then college is
wasting-
free.
I was going to say, to be fair,
It's an easy fix.
you guys have met my kids. Chances of them going to college.
We're
Yeah.
talking culinary school in my house. We're talking like
I'm talking
art school.
I'm
something
talking
that's-
small engine repair.
Oh, he's raising
University
welders.
of Phoenix, maybe Texas A&M. Those 3.
ITT Tech, but they don't graduate from there. Just like 1 year.
It's like a certificate.
Yeah, I guess it's like an associate's degree in science from a junior college.
Yeah, that's
all science.
It's totally fine. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? You declare bankruptcy, change your name so no one knows who you are. go to
Wait,
rehab.
student loans
That's
aren't
a-
dischargeable.
That's a way to become lieutenant governor of this state. That's all I'm saying.
Oh God! Wow, I didn't see that one coming. That was impressive.
Boom. All right.
Boom.
Joe, man, I hope you'll stick around and chat some more with us about nonsense, but super educational and helpful.
Yeah, I learned some stuff, and I'm in the middle of 2 1983 cases.
Excellent. All right.
Do you need co-counsel?
We're gonna exchange numbers.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks for joining us this week, and we'll see you next week.
All right.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for joining us this week at the Dirty Verdict Podcast. For links to some of the stories discussed today, please visit our website, www.dirtyverdict.com. If you have obtained a recent verdict and want us to discuss it, please email details on the verdict to us. Also, please follow us wherever you get your podcasts.